All right, good morning, first block U.S. history students. Obviously, I am not in the room this morning. Mr. DePello has volunteered to be hanging out with you guys in the back of the classroom. That is him sitting at my normal desk, but he has no need to be directing you guys or making sure you guys are being on task today. He is simply going to be in the room, and all of what you guys are going to be doing today is going to be contained within this video here, so it's important that you follow along. If you have any urgent questions, Mr. DePello can probably answer them for you, but you are the brilliant first blocks. There's no reason that you guys should not be able to follow along with this. And I know we got into this PowerPoint here on pretty much the end of class on Friday, but we're going to review a bit of it here. And there's a couple of things I need you guys to have open that you can take the time to do right now. So I need you to have this document open that we were working in on Friday titled Homefront Cause and Effect. I believe we got to about the War Industries Bond Board and didn't get any further than that. And then there is another document that should be posted in classroom titled World War I Propaganda, and I'm going to need to have you guys open that on up within classroom. I'll give you a minute here to get that done, and we're going to be working in that document towards the end of class today. So again, make sure you have this document open and you know where it is under the stream in classroom. It is a Google Slides presentation, but it's something that you guys are going to be typing on. And also, you guys need to have this Homefront Cause and Effect document open, along with anywhere that you typically take your notes. All right, here we go. So on Friday, we were talking about the home front, and we were talking about how people in the United States had to react to World War I and kind of what's going on here at home. We focused a lot on why the United States gets involved, but this is a U.S. history course, and we need to know what's going on here at home. We're really looking at cause and effect of a bunch of different events. What's happening, and then what is coming out of what's going on in the United States. What are some of the effects of these different pieces of the war? We covered, remember, that concept of total war, that concept that everybody is involved in the war effort. Civilians, military members, everybody is having their lives touched by the war. And we talked about some of the effects of that, that people may be more likely to support the war, that there could be a lot of death being caused, that we have basically just everybody being involved in the war effort. And that was our first cause and effect relationship. The second thing we were looking at is the Selective Service Act. And if you remember anything about that, that's the fact that we have a military draft going on during this time. So in 1918, we implement the first draft in our nation's history. 24 million fighting aged men in this country registered, and 3 million of them were randomly selected for military service. So we have a bunch of men being kind of forced, if you will, into this war effort. That's not saying that many of them did not go willingly, but the government called upon them to come up and serve their nation and carry out a duty that involved heading over to Europe and fighting in this war. And we talked about many of the effects of the Selective Service Act, that you may have people being resistant to joining in and not wanting to be in support of this war because they don't want to feel like they're being forced. We talked about the millions of families around the United States that are losing their husband, who is seen as the breadwinner in these relationships. So wives and children have to adjust to not having their fathers around. They have to find new sources of income. Women may be looking outside of the home to get a job to kind of supplement that income, and the fact that some of these men are not going to return, and then women had to deal with the fact that their husbands would not be coming home from their military service after paying the ultimate price and having to adjust in that way. So remember, that's the Selective Service Act. I believe we talked about this a bit at the end of class, but it's something that we need to know here, and it's the War Industries Board. So the United States was not prepared to enter into this war economically. We joined in and realized that we needed a lot of resources, we needed a lot of assistance and help, and we just needed to kind of reorient the way our industries in this country were working in order to best support the war effort. So we established something called the War Industries Board, which was in charge of making sure that all industries, whether it be oil or coal or lumber or steel or anything like that, any factory in this country was oriented towards building something for the war effort. President Woodrow Wilson was given a ton of control over the economy to regulate business, to fix prices so we know that businesses are not getting overcharged for their resources, so they can effectively and cheaply produce all of these goods. And we have a huge increase in taxes for the war effort as well. And we, I believe, talked about some of the effects of this, that products are going to get more expensive if we have price regulation coming from the president. People are going to have less money with that increase in taxes. Maybe some goods are not going to become as available because the fact that all industries are being pointed towards building things for the war. Typewriter factories are being converted to machine gun factories. Factories that may have built other types of machinery could be building planes or ships or anything like that. The shipping industry and shipyards in general grew exponentially during this time because we also did not have enough ships to be able to transport all of our resources and our men overseas. So that's another big thing. We'll see that in a video later. But just know that in conjunction with President Wilson's efforts and the establishment of the War Industries Board, we have a huge kind of government takeover of the economy at this time, making sure that our country is being able to and is producing everything it possibly can to support the war effort. So now I want you to switch back into that document. You should have these three filled out. You can get those three effect boxes filled in with somebody else in class later if you have the time. But then our last one that we're going to focus on within this document before we turn it in is the Creel Commission. And that is headed by this man right here. His name was George Creel. And we have established by President Woodrow Wilson something called the Committee on Public Information. And we talked a little bit about propaganda earlier and what propaganda looks like. And there's a ton of examples of World War I propaganda that we are going to be looking at today. And World War I propaganda was coming out of and being solely created by this new government agency called the the Committee on Public Information. This man right here was in charge of it, George Creel. It's sometimes referred to as the Creel Commission, meaning his group, people working under him, and their sole job was to create propaganda to help maintain wartime support. And we're going to look at a ton of those pieces of propaganda today. George Creel was actually a former muckraking journalist. He was one of those investigative journalists during the Progressive Era, helping spur some types of reform movements in this country. Now he was being hired by the government to help create media and create these propaganda posters that would maintain wartime support. And there were a whole bunch of different kind of areas of people's lives that the Creel Commission and their propaganda tackled. Restricting what people are eating, encouraging them to go meatless on certain days or to turn out their lights by a certain time, to plant victory gardens, meaning they're planting their own food, and we'll look at some propaganda about that, to eat less bread, to buy bonds for basically a donation to the government. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But the thing you should know is that the Creel Commission is in charge of creating all of this wartime propaganda. Posters like this: food will win the war, we observe meatless days, wheatless days, porkless days. We have these signs being put up in different restaurants around the country saying that there are some days where we're not going to have these types of foods available. We may not have bread, we may not have beef or pork or things like that, because the government is asking us to give up these particular foods in order to help support the war, and that those excess foods can go towards um, feeding our soldiers, which is a huge sacrifice. You don't see McDonald's today saying, we're not going to serve cheeseburgers on Tuesdays because we need to save that meat for our soldiers in the Middle East. We have posters like this: light consumes coal, save light, save coal. So asking people to turn off their lights, so we can conserve coal that can be used to power the ships that send our soldiers over to Europe to fight in World War I. All of these being created by the Creel Commission and the Committee on Public Information. Don't be fuel-ish. Kind of a play on words here, saying that you are foolish if you don't close your doors and keep your heat in your houses, saving that precious fuel that can be used to support the war and make a whole lot of other things. So I want you to switch back into that document. The cause and effect one, you have the cause here, the Creel Commission, but what could some of the possible effects be? I am going to give you guys 2 minutes to think of that quickly. Write down as many possible effects as you can think of. All right, so that was probably really loud, and some of you were frightened by that noise. I apologize. Well, let's look back in this document here. So you should have been able to come up with a ton of the effects coming from the Creel Commission. One of them just being huge wartime support, right? Definitely people are going to be supportive of the war, seeing all of this propaganda. But there's also that converse side. People seeing that all of this is coming from the government, they may be skeptical of the government and what they're doing here, trying to get people to give up all of these things. Definitely may have some resistance from the people as well to some of what the government's asking them to do. It's kind of hard to give up certain types of food during the week, or to make sure that you're shutting off your lights, or asking people to plant gardens in order to save food. People don't have just unlimited time and resources during a time of war. Those are some of just the possible effects that this could have had. I'm sure you guys thought of some other really good ones as well. If I was in class, we could talk about them. Just make sure you have something written down in all of these boxes here. This is going to be a really good study tool for your test, which should be coming up in the not too distant future. So if you guys can, just go ahead and hit turn in on that document because I will give you credit for it for having everything filled in there. And then you can close out of that one because we are done looking at the cause and effect document. I'm going to switch back into this PowerPoint here. So we have another really huge push from the Creel Commission and a push from the U.S. government to try and get people to support the war. And that's coming in the form of bonds, or what we're calling here Liberty bonds. If you guys don't know anything about economics, what a bond is, here are the basics of it. So the government says to the citizens of the United States, we have these different bonds in different denominations, $1, $5, $10, $100, it doesn't matter how much the bond costs. And basically, it's a government IOU saying that if you purchase this $10 bond right now, if you, just the average citizen, give the United States government $10, we're going to give you this certificate, which is called a bond, that guarantees that in 10 years or 5 years or 20 years, depending on how long the bond is for, we are going to pay you a certain amount above what this bond was worth. So say it's a $10 bond and it's good for 10 years, the government says, well, in 10 years, we will give you $20 back. So it's basically a short-term loan that you, the citizen, are giving to the government with the guarantee that it's going to be paid back. The U.S. government says, we will absolutely give you your money back if you purchase these bonds for us. It's just a huge fundraising effort for the United States government, and it was wildly successful. 2/3 of the money the government raised to fund the war came from bond sales. So that means a ton of United States citizens were buying into this and were physically purchasing these bonds from the government. An average of $400 per citizen was spent on bonds. Now, that doesn't mean everybody bought some. Some people definitely bought more than $400 worth of bonds. Others definitely didn't buy any at all. Some were buying tons and tons and tons. It just depends who you are and how much patriotic duty you felt you had towards your government. But on average, $400 per citizen, which if we take $400 in 1918 money and calculate that out today, controlling for inflation, that's a couple $1,000s per citizen, which shows just how much support there was from the United States population for a government and for this war effort. If people are willing to give up sizable portions of their income as basically donations to the government to fight this war, yes, there is the promise that you're going to get that money paid back and you're going to get more, but that's years down the road. It's not like this is a loan that's going to get paid back in a couple of months once the war is over. People are parting with a part of their salaries right now that they are not going to get back for some time. So this really shows how much support there was for the war effort, and we have tons of propaganda that focuses in on the purchasing of bonds. So what we're going to do right now, and you guys can just add to your notes, is we're going to watch a really short video clip. It'll be like 6 minutes long. That kind of just gives you an overview of everything we've talked about so far, kind of getting into the war itself and what's going on here at the home front. So I would definitely suggest adding to your notes here because it might clear up some misconceptions that you have, or it might clear up some confusion that I'm obviously not able to answer in person right now, but just take a look at this review here.
Of course, before any American soldiers were able to fight in World War I, the United States had to get troops and supplies to Europe. The costs of such an operation were staggering. To raise money and get the resources needed, the United States government implemented extraordinary measures. First, the federal government took control of the economy and gave the president the power to fix prices and regulate certain war-related industries. President Wilson next established the War Industries Board and appointed millionaire financial expert Bernard Baruch to head it. Wilson often called him Dr. Facts because of his ability to assemble, coordinate, and distribute details about war materials and production.
Every man has a right to be wrong in his opinions, but no man has a right to wrong in his facts.
No detail, however seemingly trivial, escaped his scrutiny. Baruch noticed that 8,000 tons of steel were used each year to make ladies' corsets. He asked American women to give up that fashion in support of the war. They did, and the steel saved could be employed to build 2 battleships. The board encouraged companies to use mass production techniques to increase efficiency and eliminate waste. It also established price controls, allocated raw materials, and told manufacturers what they needed to produce in order to help the war effort. As a result, industrial production increased by 20%. Other government agencies controlled the railroads, regulated the use of coal and oil, and mediated labor disputes, avoiding crippling strikes. The War Industries Board also created a massive publicity campaign, encouraging the public to contribute to the war effort by planting victory gardens and observing meatless meals, so food could be sent overseas to the troops. Gasless Sundays and lightless nights soon followed.
My Tuesdays are meatless. My Wednesdays are wheatless. I'm getting more eatless every day.
In order to conserve energy, the War Industries Board even adopted an idea first championed by Benjamin Franklin: daylight savings time, to take advantage of the longer days of summer and use less electricity. And finally, to raise the $33 billion cost of the war, the government took 2 actions. First, it established an excess profits or war profits tax on corporate earnings and higher income taxes on wealthier citizens. Taxes were raised on tobacco, liquor, and luxury goods as well. These actions collected about 1/3 of the money needed. The rest was raised by appealing to Americans' strong sense of patriotism. Liberty bonds were sold. These, in essence, loaned money to the government to fight the war. Movie stars and newspapers, parades and billboards all carried the message to buy bonds. Amazingly, on average, every adult American lent the war effort about $400, a large amount at the time. Even with the money necessary to fight the war, the government realized they would need the popular support of Americans, most of whom had been either neutral or openly against involvement. Therefore, President Wilson appointed a former muckraking journalist, George Creel, to head the Committee on Public Information, our nation's first propaganda agency. Creel was a giant when it came to advertising and public relations. He called his committee the world's greatest adventure in advertising. Creel convinced the best writers, artists, musicians, and advertising people of the day to help him sell the war. From booklets and books for Americans in various languages to anti-government propaganda messages for our enemies. Creel even got into the movie business with features such as Under Four Flags, with the help of famous film director D.W. Griffith. These pro-war movies were not only hits, they actually made money for the cause. $852,744. Remarkable when you realize that it only cost a nickel to see a movie back then. Simply put, Creel helped make an unpopular war popular. His masterstroke was the creation of a national force of 75,000 men who would deliver a patriotic 4-minute speech anytime, anywhere. The 4-minute men spoke on the draft, rationing, bond drives, and victory gardens. By the end of the war, they had delivered more than 7.5 million speeches to 314 million listeners. Musicians gave voice to the war. Songs like Till We Meet Again, It's a Long, Long Way to Tipperary, Keep the Home Fires Burning, and Over There kept American spirits high. Meanwhile, the immense task of transporting troops to France began. After years of relying on foreign vessels to take American goods overseas, America's supply of ships was limited. Consequently, shipyard workers were exempt from the draft or given deferments to make shipbuilding a priority industry. A new construction technique called fabrication, a process by which parts were built elsewhere and then assembled in a central shipyard, substantially reduced the time needed to build ships. The system worked and worked well. In a single day, appropriately the 4th of July, 1918, America launched 95 ships. Rear Admiral William S. Sims decided that the best way to get troops and supplies safely past the German U-boats was to use a convoy system. That meant that merchant and troop transport ships would cross the Atlantic in large groups, escorted by a guard of heavily armed destroyers and cruisers, circling the fleet. The plan cut shipping losses in half.
All right, so that's just a basic review of everything that we've talked about up until this point. Now I want to switch back over into here and kind of start looking at some of these aspects of propaganda and what these propaganda posters really looked like and what they were asking people to do. It asked people to make a ton of different sacrifices, like sacrifices that we cannot really appreciate today because our government has never asked us to do these types of things in times of war, even though you and I have all grown up in a time where we've been involved in a war in the Middle East in some way, shape, or form. And really, propaganda posters are just like any other piece of primary source work that we look at. We can use our our method of happy, HAPPY, in order to break all of these things down. But just like when we're looking at a political cartoon, we need to be able to figure out what the message of um, propaganda posters are and like who they're being directed towards before we can really break them down. And we don't have to do forest in the trees with a propaganda poster, but let's just look at this one here. It says, "They are giving all, will you send them wheat?" We have all these soldiers dressed in what World War I soldiers wore in terms of uniforms with those round helmets and the all green army fatigues with bayonets on their rifles. And they're plunging into the war, kind of making that appeal to people. Look at all these brave soldiers moving into battle. They're defending our country. Will you send them wheat? That doesn't sound like too big of a thing to ask soldiers to do in exchange for their lives. So really just asking people here to save wheat for these men. They should be able to eat some sort of bread while they are defending our country. We have this one here, which kind of you have to do a little bit more digging here. And it says, "Hold up your end." We have a nurse holding up a stretcher, and there's no nurse on the other side of this because it's supposed to be the viewer, and it's asking you to hold up your end. And then on the stretcher, it says War Fund Week, $100 million. And this actually refers to uh, asking people to purchase war bonds, and they were trying to, in a push, it looks like, um, gain $100 million or raise $100 million for the war effort from the sale of bonds. So we're kind of making that appeal to the viewer here. Hold up your end, purchase um, a Liberty bond to support your country. We have a nurse there kind of making that appeal as well. Like, look, there are women over in Europe serving in the military as well. She's holding up her end. How are you going to do that here at home? And here's this last one I want us to look at. We have a little girl. It says, "My daddy bought me a government bond of the Third Liberty Loan. Did yours?" And I want us to look at this one because it's pretty powerful. And I would like you to, if you can, now switch back into that World War I propaganda um, PowerPoint. And that's something we're going to be working in for the rest of class now. But you have happy broken down here, and it's a little bit different. I edited some things out. So make sure you're paying attention to and reading these things as you're about to fill this out. But I want you to take that primary source, that propaganda poster. I'm going to give you about 7 minutes here, and I want you to look at it, figure out what the message is, and then break it down with our acronym of HAPPY, just like we would on a test. This is how we interpret information and get information out of historical sources. This is another great way to practice our interpretation skill, looking at posters, where they're coming from, what the message is, who it's being directed towards. There's definitely a specific audience here. I'll give you a hint, it's not just the American people. So I'm going to put 7 minutes on the clock here. And then I want you to look back at that poster. My daddy bought me a government bond of the Third Liberty Loan. Did yours? And I want you to break it down using happy. So I'll leave this up here on the screen for you guys. But take the next minutes, really think about that, and try and get detailed with your answers. Don't just give me one word or a couple word responses. The best way to score a 4 on this is to really explain yourself and get detailed. The more you explain yourself, the better I understand that you have a full knowledge of the source that we're looking at. All right, so you guys should have had enough time to fill out that chart, and let's take a look at what you have here. Now, I have a chart kind of with my thoughts on this, and we can break it down now quickly together. So, for the context of that propaganda poster, obviously it's coming out during World War I, and it's aimed at Americans on the home front. Now, go a little bit deeper, give me a little bit more context here. Really, what we can break this down to is that the government was really wanting to have citizens make some sacrifices for the war effort, and really the biggest way that the government wanted them to do that was by purchasing Liberty bonds, and that's kind of the whole point of that poster. So that gives me a little bit more context than just saying World War One or even American home front during World War One. Getting a little bit deeper tells me that you really know why this is being produced and really what is going on around this time. The audience. Now, this gets much more specific. The audience in this case is not the American people. If we look back at the poster itself here, there's a little girl here holding a Liberty Bond saying that her daddy bought it for her. Clearly, the audience in this case is for American fathers. Now, the father is still seen as the head of the household, the breadwinner at this time, controlling all of the money for a family, and the fact that a little girl, which many fathers around the nation at this time that have little daughters saying, "Oh, look, my daddy bought this for me. He bought me a $10 bond." And that's pretty common, buying a bond for your children. You may have gotten bonds when you were born from some like of your parents' friends or some relatives that can be used, years down the road. If once you turn 18, you can cash them in and you get a little bit of money for them. You can maybe ask your parents if you have any bonds. It's kind of a typical um, birth gift. Someone will buy $100 bond and it may be worth $200 by the time you cash it in. So the audience in this case is American fathers trying to play on that fatherly instinct, that seeing that little girl and making that appeal like, look, my dad bought this for me. Did yours buy one for you? Um, just trying to make that appeal to American fathers that they should do what they can to support this country, to keep their little sons and daughters at home safe, and to kind of do their duty as Americans. Purpose is pretty easy here. Really, the goal of it is just to try and get people to buy bonds, specifically in this case, fathers, but try and get them to buy bonds because it's going to help fund the war effort. We saw 2/3 of all the money that was spent on World War One was raised by the sale of bonds. Point of view. In this case, the author is the Creel Commission. It's that government agency. I know in that video I was talking about how other agencies are putting all of their different posters out, but it's kind of all being funneled through the Committee of Public Information and the Creel Commission. They had their hands in really some of it in every way, shape, and form that we can think of. So it's coming out from the Creel Commission, or just really the government in general. And being part of the government, they obviously working for it. They want people to support it. They want to maintain that support. So they're going to try and use that emotional appeal to get people to go out and purchase bonds to support our troops. And for the why, I kind of change this up a bit, and what effects does this have on people? And it really brings out that sense of patriotism. Purchasing bonds was seen as a patriotic act. If you couldn't do any of the other things, you could at least give a little bit of your income that you worked hard for, that you're using to feed your family, to raise your family. You can use a little bit of that income to help support the government, and that's what many people did. So make sure you have that part of it filled out. You guys don't actually have that slide within your PowerPoint, so make sure you have that one completely filled out. So I'm going to switch back into this, and we're going to look at a few more propaganda posters before we move into our last part. So like I said, there's propaganda that's not just focusing in on purchasing Liberty bonds, but um, all sorts of things. This one, asking men in this country to join the Navy. Join the Navy, the service for fighting men. It looks exciting. That soldier is riding what looks to be a torpedo uh, around through the water, kind of riding it like a bucking bronco in this case, kind of making him look like an American military cowboy or something to that effect. So we have posters out there just trying to get men to voluntarily join the military, not have to be drafted through the Selective Service Act, and making the Navy man there look very exciting, adventurous, and that it would be a wild ride, if you will, that would in the end pay off well. We have posters that are focusing just towards women, and it says here, the kitchen is the key to victory. Eat less bread. So, kind of asking women, hey, cut down on your bread making. Don't purchase as much bread. You guys hold, in a way, the key to winning the war. You guys control our kitchens, and if saving food is a big deal, then women have a just as important role in supporting the war as anybody else. And that's really the message of this poster here. This one directed towards women as well, coming from the American Red Cross. Our boys need socks. Knit your bit, meaning do your part and knit some socks for the war effort. Women were asked to either go to work in factories or also do some work at home. The Red Cross would collect any homemade socks that could be sent overseas to be given to a soldier who would need them and would make use of them. So you have another poster here directed towards women. We have this one that's just kind of general. We have a ghostly Uncle Sam there standing over a man shoveling coal into the furnace. Uncle Sam needs that extra shovelful, asking people to save fuel, and in this case, save coal, and even gives people directions down here using small amounts of coal, how to keep their furnaces in a way that best uses it efficiently, um, making sure they're keeping their furnaces for both businesses and at home clean and full, free of cracks or anything like that. Just giving people advice on how to use their coal wisely so it can be put towards better uses. Another one here. Food is ammunition. Don't waste it. This is just that general American appeal. Don't waste your food. If you're eating something, make sure you eat all of it. Food is something that we can use for our soldiers to power them to victory. This one really gets into something specific here that I want us to talk about for a second. So it says, Uncle Sam says garden to cut food costs. And we've heard that term victory gardens kind of tossed around a bunch. But people were asked by the US government to plant their own gardens. And in public parks, this was really common as well. Children would get off of school and they would go to the park, and they would have all planted a garden either by the school or individual families. And they would be asked to, keep the garden weed free, making sure the vegetables are all growing. And people spent a couple hours every day after work tending to their gardens just so they didn't have to go to the grocery store and buy food. And that food could be sent to soldiers and used for the war effort. The government hasn't asked us today, with a war going on in the Middle East, to take hours out of your day every single night when you get home from work and tend to your garden, planting a garden to begin with. It's really hard work. If you've never planted a garden before, and I have not either because I know how difficult it is, it's not just a walk in the park. This is a big sacrifice that the government is encouraging people to make. Growing your own food, that concept is pretty foreign to us now. We just go to the grocery store, we go to Pick and Save, we pick out what we need and we buy it and we go home. The government's not asking us to grow all of our own food. Another poster here, fight or buy bonds, Liberty, third Liberty loan. So it's asking men in this case to either enlist in the military, go over and fight for your country, or if you can't do that, give us some of your hard-earned money so we can put it towards the war effort. And we have Lady Liberty kind of in the center there, um, kind of as the rallying figure for this bond buying poster. This last one is pretty funny to look at because it says, help in the harvest. Ice is needed to save food for the starving people of the world. So asking people to go out and help harvest ice. We don't have ice machines and refrigeration at this time. So all the ice in the world that was used was actually like harvested from lakes. They would cut off sections of it and then ship it back to places before it could melt. Like we don't think of ice as something that was a hot commodity today, but at this time it was actually pretty rare to have ice because it had to be harvested from somewhere around the world. So asking people to go help the ice harvest so it can help save food for people who need it and our soldiers as well. So those are all of, or just a collection, a few uh, posters that were coming out during this time. This is not all of them by any means. There are hundreds, even thousands of posters that were put out asking people to make sacrifices. But all of these have that theme of asking people to make sacrifices. There are a ton of things that the government is asking people to do, things that the government does not ask us to do today. And with your last little bit of class here, if you switch back into this document, um, I want to show you guys what you are going to be working on for the rest of class. So what I want you guys to do is to make your own propaganda poster. Now, I don't expect it to be as detailed as any of this. Obviously, that would be near impossible because you just do not have the time or in many cases the ability, because I certainly can't draw anything like this, to produce a really top-notch poster. But you can certainly take what you can find through Google and also just the basic shapes that are available through a slides presentation, and you can produce your own propaganda poster. But you're going to do it with a focus, as I'll explain in a second. So what I have here are a bunch of just examples of things that you can use, and you can actually copy and paste all of these. You can move them onto your slide, and you can use all of these images as pieces of your poster. And I've made one right here. And as you notice, this doesn't necessarily have to be directed towards World War I. You can certainly make a poster that encompasses some of the needs of World War I. You cannot just go ahead and copy any of these and absolutely copy the message of it. But if you want to make a poster that would be directed towards a member of our country, a U.S. citizen during World War I, by all means, go ahead and do that. But it's not necessarily a requirement. You can make this a little bit more modern and ask someone to give something up through a propaganda poster in a more modern time here. So I have my poster that I quickly made. It has the clock, which I have over here that you can copy and paste and use. It says, "Time is of the essence." Got Uncle Sam in the background. Are you doing all that you can? And we have a red X over an iPhone and Netflix here. Really, the message here is asking people to put down their electronics, give up some of that entertainment, and make sure you're doing something to support the war. Are you doing all that you can? Are you putting all your time and energy towards supporting the war effort? So again, that's a little bit more of a modern twist on it. You do not have to follow that. In fact, I mean, you certainly know more about World War I propaganda now than you do anything else. There are plenty of easy ways that you can figure out World War I propaganda type posters that you can produce yourself. You can Google around and look at some other examples. And also, you can use these pieces here that I provided for you on the slides, but it's also very easy if you just type in anything. So if you want a shoe and you go to Google Images and you go shoe vector PNGs, I'm doing on the screen here, and you click enter, you'll get all of these that don't have the white background. So you can just insert them into the document itself, and it doesn't have that white background. So that's how all this looks kind of nice. And also make sure if you're like, oh, I can't get the words to go over some of these images, if you right click on these and you look at the order, you can send backward or bring to front. So if I click send this backward, it's actually going to bring the iPhone up in front of this. But if I click on it again and I go to order and I go bring to front, it's going to bring it forward. So you can order these on a Google Slides presentation. I'm sure you guys know that already, but just wanted to make note of it, and also make use of your shapes here. I made a very basic square here as my poster. I drew in a square. I can change the fill color on it. You can add a border on it, and it doesn't have to be a post. You can make the whole slide, your blank slide here, you can make the whole slide your poster as well. So after you've created your poster, whatever that be, whatever the subject is, I'm giving you freedom here. As long as it makes sense and it is appropriate, you can make a poster, some sort of wartime propaganda poster that asks people to do anything that you think would be necessary during a war. And the last thing I want you to do is I actually want you to have that focus of happy on your own piece of propaganda. So as you're creating it, you're probably going to want to have these things in mind. What is the context? So are you making World War I one? Are you making a more modern war one? That's totally up to you. But what is the context? You really want to focus on who your audience is. Who are you creating the source for? Who is it going to appeal to? The purpose. Why is it being produced? So what are you asking people to do? What is you, the author's goal? Point of view, you are the author. So how is who you are as an individual, who you are as a student, how is that influencing your poster that you are creating? And also kind of what effect is this poster having on people? So after you've created your poster, it is absolutely necessary for you to fill out this happy chart on your own poster. So you're creating basically a primary source document here. Now it's time for you to interpret the information out and pull out all that information and put it into this chart. And this will be put into the gradebook as a grade. So you need to make sure that once you are done, you hit turn in on this document and you have both your poster created, you have a blank slide in here to do that, and you also have your happy document completely filled out. And we're going to be showing these in class tomorrow, so make sure that your poster is at a level that you are ready to present it to the rest of class. If you have any questions and you see me around today, again, I'm in the building. I'm just in a meeting right now. If you have any questions, feel free to come find me or email me. And thank you guys for going through this video and obviously being great for Mr. DePello in the back of the room. And the rest of the time is yours to be working on your propaganda poster. Again, feel free to use any of these images, or you can go ahead and Google around plenty of different stuff. But you guys are a pretty creative bunch, so I expect really great things out of here. And I will maybe see you later today, or if not, for sure tomorrow morning.